Hello and welcome to the Delphi Economic Forum. I'm Faye Doulgkeri, I'm a journalist, and today with our distinguished guests, we're going to discuss enlargement and reforms. Last December, the European Council has decided to open accession negotiations with Moldova and Ukraine, and recently took a similar decision for Bosnia and Herzegovina. This was a landmark moment, and I'm looking at you, State Secretary of Moldova, for the people of both countries who had consistently shown their European conviction as Russia continues to wage its aggression war against Ukraine and undermine democracy in Moldova. To realize the European dream, though, these countries need to implement reforms, and this is what we're going to discuss today with Mario Nava, Director General of DG Reform, Besart Kadia, Deputy Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs of Albania, Rodica Crudu, I hope I'm saying perfect, State Secretary on European Integration from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Moldova, and Valbona Zeneli, who is non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. So, Mr. Nava, the EU seems now more eager than ever to go ahead with the enlargement. Enhancing the cooperation of enlargement countries and EU member states in order to accelerate EU accession is a key priority for DG Reform. Could you please describe the responsibilities and the way that DG Reform works?
Yeah, no, well, first of all, you're absolutely right that enlargement is a priority, I would say, because of the current climate. I mean, imagine in the current geopolitical climate, if we hadn't done the enlargement in 2004, we would be in a much different situation, right? And the enlargement in 2004, of which we celebrate the 20 years in a few weeks, actually was a very clear win-win policy. It benefited the countries toward which we enlarged, but it benefited Europe as a whole. Europe, the European stance and the position of Europe in the world has benefited dramatically from the 2004 and then 2007 and 13 enlargement. Now, on the enlargement, of course, doesn't come down from the sky. It's very clear. We have a set of rules. It's merit-based. That's what in our jargon we call the Copenhagen criteria. And the mother of all Copenhagen criteria is, of course, the alignment with the EU acquis, which is the difficult part. Imagine that the alignment with the EU acquis is a challenge also for existing country every time we publish a new directive or a new piece of law. Well, in that moment, there is a need for that. And the existing member states have at their disposal a relatively powerful instrument, which is the technical support instrument, which is managed by DG Reform, in order to do this alignment, further alignment. So it makes only sense that we find ways to, in the process, while it will take time, of course, so during the time it will take, it makes only sense that we find ways to ensure that we can assist the candidate countries and not only the existing member states in getting into the European Union. And then later, if you want, I'll go into more details of the way we assisted and what are the areas we can help most. But what is very clear is that if you look at the things that are already out, the Western Balkan facility and the Ukraine facility, you see that very much the direction is that one, to facilitate a merit-based enlargement.
Rodica Crudu, Ukraine and Moldova could soon make some headway in their paths towards EU membership after the European Commission sent its draft frameworks for accession talks to member states. The frameworks which set out the principles, basically, and guidelines that will steer Brussels accession talks with both Kyiv and Chisinau are going to have to be unanimously endorsed by all 27 EU member states. How does your country, first of all, feel about this involvement, about the European path? Do people feel comfortable with the reforms and the sacrifices that they will need to make in order to continue in this European path?
Very good question, and thank you for the question. What I want to mention is that for the Republic of Moldova, receiving the candidate status back in 2022 and the decision of the European Council from the December last year to open the accession talks means for our country, first of all, a clear perspective where we are heading to. A clear future for our citizens, a more secure and a more prosperous future for our citizens towards a better governance based on consolidated democratic institutions and rule of law. But also a clear signal that we are on the right track with our ambitious reform agenda to build a modern European state at home. And considering what has been mentioned, because there is a whole EU acquis ahead of us, we do basically see the EU acquis as an excellent blueprint, a roadmap, if you like, guiding us towards achieving this goal. Related to the perceptions of the citizens, I want to mention that the latest opinion polls shows that the majority of Moldovans are supporting our European path. And yes, we are aware that some of the reforms might incur, for example, short-term costs, especially for businesses in those sectors where still EU standards need to be adopted. Yet, the message that we are conveying is that to view these costs as investment in the future, which significantly will outweigh these temporary inconveniences. And yet, I had also to mention that we still have to cope with the Russian propaganda and fake news in our society, which definitely are determined to undermine the European integration process. But I also want to say that we are going to engage these constituencies in order to dispel those false myths about the EU, and instead talking to every citizen, to every people, about what they stand to gain by, in the future, being EU citizen.
Besart, Kadia, according to the latest European Commission report for Albania, the ongoing accession negotiation process needs to translate now into acceleration of EU-related reforms. Are you making progress, and in which areas are you focusing right now?
Well, the whole EU enlargement process, I think everyone in the room has his own opinions or perspective. I heard earlier that the support for the European Union in Moldova is high. I'd like to say that for Albania, it's more than 90% of the population that supports the integration into the European Union. So we have a public support, which gives, at the same time, two responsibilities for the government towards the EU enlargement process and also to the citizens who want to see the reforms for their own benefits. And in the last process of screening, I'd like to mention and emphasize that Albania has received very good remarks from the European Commission. And one of the major hurdles for any country which comes from a post-transition past, I'd like to emphasize that the judicial reform has been one of the pillars which has given a green light towards other areas of political and economic activity. So rule of law remains one of those things that we think we've done well, we've committed to it, and we're seeing the first few results towards having a well-functioning judicial system. At the same time, Albania has done a lot of reforms and in terms of public administration and in providing services. Most of the public, most of the public services are now digitalized, which makes it efficient. It removes hurdles towards the business. It also removes petty corruption or corruption towards like the official and the citizens. And that's also in international reports which emphasizes the importance of digitalization of public services. Economic reforms remain important. We, at the same time, we are working towards Sustainable Development Goals for 2030, which is in line with the EU integration process. So structural reforms, attracting foreign direct investment, and so I'll say judicial reform, public administration, and economic structural reforms are the main three pillars at this stage.
Falbona, if I may, I would like to ask you if the Russian invasion in Ukraine has opened a geostrategical window for enlargement now, if there's a momentum, and which do you think are the main challenges for this country, the challenges that these countries need to face in order to realize their European dream?
Well, thank you very much, Faye, for this question. And I'd like to thank the organizers for keeping enlargement in the agenda, the topics of the conference. I see that there are many panels and dinner discussions that talk about enlargement, and I think this is crucial. This is very important. The narrative, the change of mentality is also very important. More than 20 years ago, it was the Thessaloniki promise back in 2003 that the region will soon join the European family. Unfortunately, there was enlargement fatigue, which even brought reform fatigue in the region, and we have to accept that. I'm not representing any government here. And so there has been some sort of backsliding in some countries when it comes to democracy, when it comes to rule of law, and that has brought slower also economic development in the region. And when you ask about the challenges, I think that is one of the main challenges and opportunities that could bring the region closer to the European Union. What we have seen is some divergence or lack of convergence economically between the Western Balkans and the countries in Eastern Europe with the European Union. The region, the entire market in the Balkans is almost 1% of the total market of the European Union, less than $150 billion. But when it comes to the GDP per capita, the income per capita of the citizens is less than 14% in current prices, not in purchasing power parity. And so it has been diverging over the last 20 years. The hope was that we will be much quicker. So I think really bringing the region closer economically through the new growth plan, but also through the new procedures of staging in and joining the single market, I think this is where we're going to start seeing the immediate benefits of enlargement. Now, it's important that we have the geopolitical and security urgency of enlargement back to the table. The point is that how long will this window of opportunity be there? And so how quickly the countries will be ready to implement the necessary reforms to catch the train. We know that this fast-track accession, both for Georgia, for Moldova, and for Ukraine, and we talk about revitalization when it comes to the Western Balkans. So it looks like even in the narrative, the two main countries now are Ukraine and Moldova that are driving the process. So what is the region going to do, the Western Balkans, to get back into the process?
Mm-hmm. Mario Nava, you're already helping member states to design and implement reforms. What does your experience show? What is critical in this procedure?
I would say what is critical is, first of all, the candidate countries should understand they are not alone into this. None is alone. I mean, whatever happens, all these the issues are issues that touch on all member states, so both existing and prospective. And it's quite amazing the amount of common concerns that member states have. That's the point number one. The point number two, what makes a project very critical is the fact that the country who is the beneficiary of this project has the necessary political ownership, the necessary political commitment. Because this thing, the technical support instrument, as the word says, is technical. So the only thing it cannot do is to substitute the political will. If there is no political will, it's impossible. Now, we heard that there is such a great support in Albania, and I'm sure in Moldova, and I'm sure in many other countries. So the objective is really to granulate this support overall for the enlargement into the various measures that will need to be taken. The third element of what is critical is obviously working on priorities, working on what really matters. And this is something that in the last few years we have been doing systematically with the existing countries. I mean, with member states, every year we publish something that we call flagship. And by publishing the flagship, we sort of canalize their request into what truly matters. And what truly matters is nothing less than what the member states themselves and the parliament decide in their meetings in the council and the parliament. So these are the European guidelines, the green transition, the digital transition, the public administration, upskilling and reskilling. These are the sort of things that truly matter. So this is what I think what is critical. Helping one another, understanding that you are in a group of countries with those things, focusing on what truly matters, and then the most critical thing is really to have the political support and to maintain it all through the process.
Rodica, Crudu, in which areas is right now focusing, your government is focusing as far as reforms are concerned?
Honestly, to be honest, we cannot afford to focus on some areas because, metaphorically speaking, there are construction sites on every policy area. However, I would like to highlight, as my colleague from Albania was mentioning, that we have been diligently working on improving public services, including through digitalization of the services, which we see this as an excellent tool to prevent corruption in the relationship between the state on the one hand and businesses and societies on the other hand. Speaking of corruption, it is important to mention that we have taken important steps towards our efforts for de-oligarchization. Related to this, we have made important headway in improving security, but also in consolidating the institutional framework thereof, which was also an important, let's say, prerequisite considering the regional war and the new threat constellation we are having to face. We have also made progress in reforming public administration reform. Last year, we adopted few governmental decrees and reforms in this regard, public finance management, but also we are rethinking how the financing of political parties, and we ensure that elections could take place without any undue interference of malignant actors that are acting against the interests of our society and our citizens. Of course, it is essential to be mentioned that reform of the judiciary system, which is probably the most complex process in our reform endeavors, it is a very difficult process. But besides all the difficulties and the resistance that comes from inside the system itself, we managed to register some of the achievements in this regard. Just to mention a few, the members of self-governing bodies, of judges and prosecutors, the members of the Supreme Court of Justice must now undergo an independent vetting process to prove their integrity. We have also working on strengthening the capacity of anti-corruption prosecutor office, and even in this difficult area, we managed to move ahead. What I want to mention is that at the national level, there were 37 working groups that have been created, each of the working group working on a specific chapter of EU acquis, but also some groups on the political criteria and economic one. And each of them is working towards aligning Moldovan legislation to the EU acquis, but also designing and implementing effective implementation mechanisms to make sure that the legislation is put in practice and provides benefits for citizens.
In Albania, which are your plans for the completion of the reforms? Do you have a specific timetable?
I'd like to say that timeframes is something that is in our approach. I think this comes from the experience we have with the whole EU accession process. And the time frame, we think it's given that it's a political thing, and also it encompasses a lot of different institutions and different platforms and reforms. We think we will do our best, and we are committed to achieve as a time frame, let's say, given most of the objectives which also EU institutions have talked about, which is 2030. And that's aligned with our internal commitment towards internal reforms to achieve sustainable economic reforms and economic development goals, and aligned together, so EU accession process and fully EU member country, together with the internal objectives. I think it's more realistic. So what we have, Albania has quite often emphasized the importance also for EU rules to be clear on the accession process and the whole institutional negotiations. I mean, what has happened is most of the time that when we thought we were almost there, a few times there have been postponement in terms of time frame. So yes, we are committed, and it's for our own benefit. So we realize that we are in a process which is for the country's benefit, which also opens next EU markets or greater markets and higher standards of services and higher standards of public services, etc. In that regard, we wouldn't emphasize that we are committed towards a time frame.
Nava, you mentioned before TSI, the instrument DG Reforms uses to help member states. How can DG Reform help the enlargement countries?
For the enlargement countries, I think we have found a formula that till now is giving some satisfaction, which is the formula of including the enlargement countries into existing projects. So we show to them all the projects that there are, and we ask whether they would like to participate. Formally, we say as observers, because the regulation doesn't allow anything else, but in reality, they are true participants. And when we do so, we also ask to the member states whether they are happy to have Albania or Moldova participating. Until now, in all projects, all member states have said yes. Let me give you two concrete examples, one on Albania and two on Moldova. On Albania, Albania is participating in a multi-country project where there are also Spain, Portugal, and Netherlands on emerging technologies to facilitate civic participation. So to facilitate that people contribute to civic life and to political life. And we look at emerging technologies and in particular social platforms and things like that. And Moldova is participating in two projects. One is on public procurement, and in particular, the professionalization of public procurement. I mean, COVID has shown that public procurement constitutes a central part of the way we run an economy. And Estonia has demanded support for making sure that it becomes truly a strategic function, very professional, and Moldova is joining Estonia into that. And then there is another example, which is the fight against unemployment. As you know, a fight with which Europe recently had very good success. The number of unemployment in Europe in this moment are nowhere to be seen compared to the past. So we have had great success through different policies. In particular, many emphasize the active labor market policies, and we have a project in Poland that Moldova has joined. It is a project to see which best public services can help the economically inactive people to become active in the labor market. These are just three simple examples, but I hope they give the dimension of what we do.
And I would like very quickly to hear how this process is going for both of your countries, the participation as observers right now.
Well, I'd like to, yes, that is very important, and this is something that we have asked, and we have been very active in trying to say that, okay, we need to have institutional and legal framework that we try to align. So we have a big mountain to climb, and we have limited time, so we want to do the reforms. But at the same time, we need to bear in mind that we are trying to catch up institutionally, but also economically. And what it means is most of the Western Balkan countries, they need to have also EU further support. One of these projects, I mean, it's the first, let's say, is the start, and we hopefully, apart from the observer status in most of the projects, we hope in the future that there will be further economic or other opportunities to participate in concrete projects which would enhance the gap between where we have started in infrastructure and in other areas of public services and you name it, and trying to catch up with institutionally, but at the same time in terms of economic development.
And in Moldova?
I want to mention that any such a project is of a great practical value for our country because it allows the public servants from different institutions to get insights of the European Union's member states' experience and thus helping us to streamline our regulatory and national legislative system. Especially when it comes to such sensitive areas as public procurement, because that's one of the projects we are benefiting in, which in past was, have been prone to some corrupt practices and schemes. And in this regard, I want to mention that it came at the right moment, this opportunity to participate into this project, because last year we approved the National Development Program for the public procurement, and one of the specific objectives of this program is to develop and build the capacity to increase the professionalization of the people, civil servants involved in public procurement, and this project is helping us in achieving this goal. And to a larger extent, the National Development Program also is focusing on developing action lines to strengthen and to develop an efficient public procurement system. And this project is also giving us opportunities to build capacity to implement these reforms. And we are very grateful for the openness and the opportunity to be part as an observers to this project. We saw the benefits. We see that it helps us a lot in implementing the reforms, and therefore we want to benefit much broader from this TSI, technical support instruments. And I want to mention that we sent an official letter to extend our participation in this project.
And very fast, just to close this discussion, Valbona, which would be the danger for Europe if we lose the momentum right now?
Well, I think living in a new, renewed area of strategic competition, the Western Balkans should not be considered anymore the backyard of Europe, but it's actually the front yard of Europe, considering the malign influences also. So what is important, the danger, is that we won't have a Europe free, secure, at peace, prosperous, without the two regions, the Western Balkans and Eastern Europe. But once again, the final message that I'd like to give is that there is a need to change the mentality, because you have to also talk to people, communicate to people in the European Union countries. Then the Western Balkans and Moldova and others can become part of European solutions. And one of that has to do to link the nearshoring and the de-risking strategy of the European Union for strategic economic autonomy with creating more opportunities in the regions to crowding in and bringing in investment, which is so much needed for stability and economic convergence in the future.
So thank you very much all for watching us today. Thank you, a big thank you to DG Reform, who has been the programming partner, and of course the Delphi Economic Forum for hosting this conversation. Thank you.